Good evening, this is the Oscar expert here with Brother Bro. It's time to review Shirley, new film, psychological drama from Josephine Decker. Elizabeth Moss plays real-life author Shirley Jackson. Michael Stolberg plays her husband. The film is about a young couple who comes to live with them for a temporary amount of time.
A lot of people are not gonna like this movie. It's a really hard movie, I think, to love. I wouldn't say it's a hard movie to like, but it's gonna isolate a lot of people who watch this, especially if you're just like, oh, Elizabeth Moss is in a movie, she seems kind of quirky. Like, no. I felt kind of isolated from like what was going on in the movie for like a good chunk of it. I mean, it would kind of fluctuate how much I was understanding like what was happening or how much I felt like I got what the movie was trying to do. It was pretty unclear. I mean, this is a very, very unconventional movie, even in terms of like the story. It leaves it ambiguous as to like what the characters are looking for or what's happening with them because it's all internal. Like the movie's about an internal transformation for the protagonist. She's sort of lured into Shirley Jackson's world by just being around her, being in her presence. And you have to kind of piece together, like, what is it, that she's finding here? It was kind of a challenging film for me to watch, but there are a lot of plus sides, too, so.
Elizabeth Moss and Michael Stolberg are giving performances that are highlights in their careers. There's a lot of meat for them to chew on. They're both, like, pretty insane, especially Shirley's character. And as a couple, they have, like, this very odd dynamic. They're unpredictable. They're kind of, like, awful, horrible people in, like, a British sense where it's like, oh, the two horrible people who lived in the little house. Horrible people.
They're
like,
wretched. They're wretched.
Yeah.
That's what they are.
The movie might not be going for comedy, but it can be funny just because Michael Stolberg and Elizabeth Moss, like the choices they're making are so amusing. There's a lot to work with for these actors and they're really chewing on it. I don't know if they're having a good time, but they're definitely like enjoying like digging into these characters. They're very eccentric. Logan Lerman and Odessa Young's characters are very like normal and subdued compared to Elizabeth Moss and Michael Stolberg's characters.
I think the lead actress did a great job in this film. I think generally people are going to go in this having no familiarity with who she is, and it's kind of the point. But the transformation she goes throughout the film, like I think she played it really well. And she's actually somebody, by the end, I'm like looking forward to what she's going to do. Hopefully she's going to be in more stuff and do interesting roles. I think she was just as good as like Moss and Stolberg in this film.
I didn't get that she was on par with them. I know it's that her character is purposefully like doing less, but yeah. I don't know if I felt like I latched onto that character in a really strong way or like experienced the transformation.
Character-wise, maybe, but the performance was like very vulnerable, I thought.
She basically forms an odd sort of friendship with Shirley, who's a person who's like afraid to leave her house.
And doesn't
really
have
make friends. And like you were saying, it's kind of confusing as to what that is.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of projection or like this great author sees something in me. There's a little bit of Shirley kind of like transforming this character and using that for her own creative work.
Well, interestingly, Shirley says like, I'm a witch. So, is she literally taking her energy out and then putting something back in? Like, is she kind of sucking her soul out? I don't know. I mean, it's one way you could look at it, but she's also giving life to a character who is supposed to be like a blank slate. Normally in a film you want a character who you can identify with immediately, but this one is a blank slate, but it's very intentionally that way. So I have a hard time like criticizing the film for very many things because there's an intention behind all the things that I might have not really enjoyed or like had trouble with or that I grappled with.
Is Shirley giving this girl like a gift or is she giving her a curse? And I feel like it's sort of both.
It's supposed to be both.
The way that people in this film say that they feel when they read Shirley Jackson's work is like thrillingly horrible. There's something exciting about that feeling. Maybe you could argue that this is what the movie is stating, like the human condition is. Like there's something exciting about escaping normalcy. And I think the movie's also trying to argue that this normalcy, especially for women and girls, like they're in a world that's kind of being like shaped for them. Entering marriage with a kid in this case feels like it can put them in a box. And now she's getting a glimpse outside of that. And it's exciting. It might even affect her life in a negative way. Like she might not be able to go through society.
Is she going to be as good of a mother,
But at the same time, like, can you go back after like having the gateway to that?
Another point of ambiguity is, who is Elizabeth Moss writing about? She's writing about a real girl who ran away, but there's nothing we know about her. Yet you get the sense that the protagonist, Rose, is the one who she's drawing her inspiration from. Like she's connecting with this character. She's bringing that into her story. And the relationship between the character that she's imagining and creating in her mind, and then the protagonist is very like blended together. And it's weird to see a movie like try to do that.
She's also seeing herself in this character.
Yeah, it's definitely that too. What makes this film interesting is just the way it's made. There's a really unique voice to the directing of this film, and it made me want to watch the other works that the director's done. And it doesn't feel like the shots are necessarily like planned. They're very like floaty. The camera's always moving. It's never on a tripod. It's often very shallow depth of field, often like sort of claustrophobic, a lot of close-ups. And the camera's just kind of curiously like rotating around characters often. And the editing is sometimes non-linear. And again, this sort of just adds to the fact that like we're not looking at this film in a straightforward way.
And there's also some interesting sound design and an interesting score here. The score is actually done by Mudbound composer Tamar Kali. It's very like plucky, using string instruments in a percussive way. It's disorienting and sort of minimal at times, but it's really effective. You know, when contrasting that with her Mudbound score, like obviously this is like an interesting composer we got here.
I also thought the art direction was really great. I mean, it was very colorful. It was like colorful and muted at once. That literally makes no sense. It felt like a vibrant period movie that was also kind of had like the elements that you'd need to be like stuffy, but there was nothing stuffy about the way it was filmed and the way that way that you experienced the period. I mean, it was very alive.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about like this is a biopic. Like this is a movie about a real person. It's fictionalized, but she's a real person. And like as a biopic, it's very, very unconventional.
Overall for the movie, I had a hard time thinking about if I liked it or not. My enjoyment of the film was like kind of fluctuating. It was hard for me to find something to latch onto. And I'm not really sure like what I took away from it. If you have read the source material for the book that Shirley Jackson is working on in the film, you'll probably enjoy this movie more. From what I've read about the book after I saw the film, the movie's like a microcosm for what happens in the book. While I'm watching the movie, I'm like searching for a frame of reference, you know, where can I like apply, you know, what's happening here? And if you've read the book, like that's the perfect application for it. But without having read the book, I personally have limitations as to how much I can really relate and connect with the story, I felt like. But I would still say it's a very well done film. I think it's kind of unquestionable.
I definitely see how this is a hard movie to love. I really liked it, and I think that the most like pleasurable moments are the performances from Stolberg and Moss. I still felt like the protagonist could have been a little stronger in that like you could have felt the transformation more. You kind of just like notice that she's going through the transformation. I mean, I guess I felt it at some times. Like it was definitely like a sort of disorienting movie. Some people are wondering if this movie could get any Oscar buzz, especially for Elizabeth Moss in the lead, perhaps Michael Stolberg in the supporting. Answer is no, no, no. Elizabeth Moss has a better chance for being nominated for The Invisible Man. And she doesn't have a good chance of being nominated for The Invisible Man.
Does the movie we just described sound like an Oscar film? I mean, that's all you have to say.
And just know that this is an art house film before going in. Expect weirdness. It's going to have a low IMDb score.
Oh yeah, it already does. It's like a 6.0. Objectively, it was what it was going for. It did exactly that. I really can't flaw the movie for anything. But on a subjective level, I came away not really knowing what to think or feel about it. If I watch it again, might that change? Yeah, sure. But for right now, we're going to balance out the objective and the subjective. Let's go with a 7.
I would give it an 8. It definitely expressed something that I haven't seen before.
Yeah.
And the style was interesting. Like the performances, you know, were cake for me.
Also, Elizabeth Moss says that this is a character that is like maybe the most her on the inside. And I have no idea what to make of that. All that does is make me terrified of Elizabeth Moss.
Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing.
Will you surely give this video a thumbs up?